you'll probably hear that the easiest place to start stitching your cross-stitch pattern is from the middle. So today I want to talk about how you can find that start point on your fabric. Hi there Stitchy friends, I'm Kat from Catkin and Lily, bringing you the best tips, tricks and tutorials so you can get the most joy from your stitching. Now, starting to stitch from the middle of your design is absolutely the easiest place to start, because very simply it means that you won't end up with your stitching off centre on your fabric, or even worse, that you run out of fabric space to finish stitching on. So on this mermaid pattern here, you can see the centre marked with arrows at the top and on the side, and also with horizontal and vertical red lines. So it makes it really easy to find the centre. Now I just need to find the centre of my fabric so that I can start stitching on it. Now, there are good reasons to start from a different spot on your pattern, such as from a corner, especially if you're stitching without an embroidery hoop. And you'll see why in my video about this, so I'll link that in a card and in the description if you want to take a look at that after this video. So let's look at how you can find the exact centre of your fabric. So the first way is to fold your fabric in half and crease it, and then fold it in half, and then this point in the middle will be the centre. So you can pop a needle in there and open your fabric out, and that should be in the middle. Now, I find this quite tricky to do without sort of pinning the fabric together, so instead what you can do is, if you fold it and crease it and then open it out and crease it the other way, you'll find you can see those crease lines when you open it out. So I can see where the middle is still on my fabric there, and I know that that's the centre point. Now, the downside to this method is that you might prefer not to make strong crease lines in your fabric before you even start stitching, because that's just making more work for yourself later to remove these. So I usually do a variation on this, where I'll fold the fabric in half, but without creasing it, and then I'll just guess where I think the middle is, along here, and pop my needle in. And I'll just leave it there while I fold it the other direction, and then I can see how close I am, and I'm probably one square off, so I'll move it one over, and then now that's the centre. So that's done exactly the same thing, but without putting hard creases into my fabric. And it's quite a fun game, seeing how close I can get to the middle. So another way to find the centre if you don't want to fold the fabric is simply to measure using a ruler. A standard ruler is absolutely fine, it just requires a wee bit of maths. So the design that I have here, I can see I've got 16 count Ada, so I can see the size it's going to be here. I'm going to call that 10 centimetres square. I've cut my fabric to 20 centimetres square, so I can measure along the bottom, see where 10 centimetres is, that's halfway on 20 centimetres, put the ruler the other way and measure to 10 centimetres, and I can pop my needle in just to indicate that as well. Now obviously that's fairly easy maths, I've got 20 centimetres and the design is 10 centimetres. You can also use a centre finding ruler. So you would place that on the fabric with 0, you find it's at 10 and 10, so that I know that is the centre. And again, it's a similar process, just line that up. You just don't necessarily have to do the maths, because you can just make sure you've got the same number either side. So it's just a little bit easier, but a standard ruler works absolutely fine. Now, however you do it, once you've found your centre hole, I like to push a needle down through the middle, and then I'll come up just a couple squares below and leave that in there until I'm ready to start, so I know that that top hole there is the middle of the fabric. I wouldn't suggest marking this with a pencil unless you know you're going to be stitching over it. And if you're going to stitch with your fabric in a hoop, then make sure to mark this centre point before you put your fabric into the hoop. And of course, unless you have been very miserly with the size of your fabric, a few stitches one way or the other will absolutely not matter. Now, what if the piece of fabric that you've chosen has got the selvage on it? So that's this tightly woven piece along the edge. Do you include that or not when you're finding the middle? Now, I personally don't, because when you're finishing the piece, you might even want to cut this off because it would be bulkier if you were, for example, putting it into an embroidery hoop. Now, I'll always leave the selvage on because that's one edge that I don't need to prepare to stop it fraying. And if you want to know more about that, then you can check out my video with 5 ways to stop your fabric fraying, which I'll link in a card and in the description. But I don't include the selvage when I'm measuring my fabric or finding the middle. So you'll see on here, I've still got 20 centimetres across, but I've got 20 centimetres down here, not including the selvage. So when I'm folding to find the middle, I would fold up to the selvage in that direction, and I'll take my middle point from there. So now you know how to quickly and easily find the middle of your fabric. So I hope that helps you out, and if so, then do give the video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe for more stitchy tips and tricks. Thank you so much for watching, and happy stitching!